Well, what I'm here to talk to you about today is when it's time to consider long-term care, and there's really no right or wrong time to consider long-term care. I was just going to thank Mark because I was going to talk about personal preferences, and I know everybody in this room is not interested in long-term care, but there are those people who do require care, and their preference is to get the help when they need it, and to look at long-term care as an option when their care needs cannot be met in the community. And I think Natoya touched on a lot of the factors that would lead somebody to believe that they do need long-term care. Availability of family services that the CCAC could provide, but is not enough to keep somebody in their home. Sometimes people have the financial ability to hire privately, and so that they can hire privately in addition to the services that we provide. But as Natoya said, sometimes this is not enough, and that's when we start the application process. Okay, so I'd just like to introduce you to Dorothy. Dorothy is the beloved mother of Stephanie, and she's looked after her mother for years. And Stephanie now has some health concerns of her own as she ages, and she's finding the pressure and the demands of her family, her work, and providing care for her mother too much. And so Dorothy's health care needs are increasing, and the situation is now that they really do need to start the process for long-term care. Now, we all recognize that this is I hope I do this right. Yeah. That this is a very emotional process, and it is different for every family, each one of our clients. Because Dorothy is already receiving in-home service, the process for initiating placement is a simple one. Dorothy's daughter, Stephanie, could just contact the case manager, and that home visit would be set up, and the application process would be begun. Now, Dorothy and Stephanie can start to get ahead of things a little bit by starting to think about what long-term care homes that they would like to look at. And we have a new video series, of all of our 27 homes that can be viewed by logging on to a website. And that will allow Dorothy and Stephanie to sit down together and come up with a shorter list of homes that they feel that Dorothy would be interested in. Dorothy and Stephanie would then, with that short list, make appointments to tour the homes. We always encourage people to tour the long-term care homes and take their loved ones with them whenever possible, because it's going to become their home. And so making the scheduled appointment, because they do run tour times on different days, going in, talking to the staff, going and talking to the other residents there, talking to people in the parking lot, family members who are on their way in, find out what it's like. See if that's the type of home that would suit your loved one. And in this case, Dorothy was able to narrow the choices down to 5. Now, for Dorothy, there were certain preferences that she was considering in terms of making her decision. And Dorothy has a serious pet allergy, so Dorothy was looking at a long-term care home that did not have pets. Not most, but a lot of long-term care homes may have a cat on a unit. There may be birds, fish. They'll sometimes have a dog. One of our homes had a dog who was famous, who was on TV not too long ago on Global News. And knowing that she has allergies, that was going to be an important determinant in choosing a home. The other important piece is that Dorothy speaks Polish. She also speaks English, but as she sort of progresses in her illness, Stephanie has noticed that Dorothy is reverting back to her Polish, and therefore having a home that has staff members and other residents who speak Polish was important consideration as well. Stephanie also really wanted for her mother to be in a home that was close by, because the more people are able to visit their loved ones, the better the outcome. And so choosing a home that was close to Stephanie's was probably the most important determining factor, and it is often for other people as well. And then the final thing that they considered was that Dorothy, she loves gardens. When Dorothy was well, she was an avid gardener, and even as she sort of became less able to get out, she still enjoyed sitting in the garden. And a lot of our long-term care homes have lovely courtyards, and so for her, this was one of the determining factors. Now, in the meantime, they've started to do their work. The case manager starts to do her work. So the case manager will contact the family doctor, and the health assessment form would get completed. That's a billable OHIP service, so there's no charge to the, just in case you didn't know, to the client. And then he would fax that back to the CCAC. At the same time, Dorothy's case manager will set up a home visit for Dorothy, Stephanie, in Dorothy's home and complete that assessment that Notoya was talking about. The other important piece that happens at this home visit is that Dorothy's capacity to make decisions around long-term care is assessed by the case manager. And this is so important because that's the person who is going to be deciding as to whether or not the bed offer is accepted or declined, and that person is the one who's going to sign the consent form and facility choice sheet, and in this case it was Dorothy. So once that package is complete, Notoya talked about what happens. It goes to the placement department, and all of the file gets sent to a long-term care home, and the long-term care home reviews the application and decides whether or not they're able to manage this client's care needs. In this case, Dorothy is accepted to the wait list for all 5 of her choices, and now she waits. Now, when one of Dorothy's choices becomes available, then what happens is myself as a placement coordinator would be contacting Stephanie because Dorothy has indicated to the case manager that it is her preferred choice that her daughter be contacted. So I would give all the bed offer details to Dorothy. I have to get my water. Can you get? I would get all the bed offer details to Dorothy. To Stephanie. Thank you. And once she has all those details, she would contact the home and she could arrange for Dorothy and Stephanie to view the room. Now, they've already done their full tour, so it's not necessary for them to have another tour, but they do have the opportunity within that 24 hours to see the room. Now, Dorothy has to make the decision. I've given Stephanie the information, but Dorothy's the one who's ultimately going to decide whether or not she wishes to accept the offer. Dorothy has 24 hours to decide, and so what we find is that phone call that comes, we tell you you have a bed offer, you have 24 hours to make the decision, and then, probably move in the next day. So Dorothy thinks about it. It isn't bed offer in her second choice. It is not her preferred choice, which was the one that was closest to Stephanie's home, but she does decide to accept the bed offer. Usually what happens, they want you to move in the next day. In this case, Dorothy was not able to move in the next day because Stephanie could not get the time off work, so she moved in 2 days later. Whenever anybody gets a long-term care bed offer, you do have up to 5 days to move in, but you would be charged for the room on the day that the bed was available. Now, a lot of people feel that that transition is a very difficult one. Moving into a long-term care home, it's a loss of independence for the person moving in, and there's a lot of guilt feelings associated with the change for the caregiver. So we really do encourage family members to think about the kinds of things that you would want to bring to the admission. Bring personal belongings, perhaps a robe, perhaps a blanket or some sort of item that she would recognize as familiar, and she would try to decorate the room and make it as personal as possible. The other thing is to make sure that you have enough time for the admission. It does take a couple of hours, and it's during that admission time that you're going to talk to the long-term care home and let them know what the client's needs are. What does your mom like? What does your mother dislike? And so they keep a record of all that so that they can make Dorothy as comfortable as possible when she moves in. Now, in this case, when Dorothy got the bed offer, it wasn't her second choice. She can opt to keep her file open for her other choices, and usually people will say, you know what, I only really want this choice. I'm happy with my second choice, but I really want to move to my first choice. What we often do if people are undecided as placement coordinators is that we'll call in about 6 to 8 weeks and we'll say to the family member, how's Dorothy doing? Is she settling in? Does she like her home? And if she does like it, she can absolutely stay at her second choice. But if her wish is really to move to the home that was closest to Stephanie, then she can stay on the wait list, and then when a bed becomes available in her preferred choice, then she can certainly move to that when the time comes. So we talk about it being an emotional process, and it truly is for the people involved. So the CCAC case manager, placement coordinators, we're there to provide whatever support is needed to hopefully make that transition into long-term care a pleasant one and as positive a change as possible. And I think that, you know, there's so many examples that I can give you of people who have done really well moving into long-term care, people who have found that they've lived in socially isolated environments and all of a sudden they're participating in activities, they're having their care needs met, and then the time with their loved ones is an enjoyable one because the care is not being provided by their loved ones, but instead by the people at the home. So I hope that that process is clear, and any questions, please feel free.